This is the first chapter of the second book, Contemporary Politics in India. And we move on to the first chapter, Challenges of Nation Building, wherein we'll study partition, its consequences, the challenges that India faced, integration of princely states, and reorganization of states. There are three videos that whose link I would send, and you could view them to get a background knowledge of what happened prior to independence, that is in 1947. The midnight speech of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, Tryst with Destiny, where he reflects on how we step out from an age under the British dominion and how we find independence today. What was its significance and what are the problems that the newly independent India faces? We also need to understand that the partition of the nation was an accompaniment with the independence of the country. We have already studied in certain aspects in our history books about how the Independence Act transferred power from the British Crown to the Indians, wherein it was left as a choice to the Indian princely states to join India or to join Pakistan or even to remain independent. The British Dominion was divided into two parts, those directly under the British called the British provinces and those under the princely states called the Indian states. There was also the Commissioners province, which are four in number, which are not significant at the moment. What we need to understand is we have already partitioned the country based on the demand of the Muslim League for a different dominion, for a different community as they referred themselves to be. The dominion was divided into India and Pakistan on the basis of majority provinces of a particular community forming a different nation. The so-called Pakistan today, that is the West Pakistan, also had at that time what is called as today's Bangladesh or East Pakistan. West Pakistan had a majority of the Muslim population and hence the boundaries formed what we call as the West Pakistan. Bengal was already divided into two since 1905, that is the part of East Bengal also formed East Pakistan now. So we have an independent India which is divided into roughly three parts, the West Pakistan, the East Pakistan and India. Within India and within Pakistan we have certain princely houses who we now have to take permission to join either India, and likewise that is what Pakistan would do. So the current challenges, if we leave aside the princely states, are to establish democracy in the country because we are now independent from the British rule. So we need to have our own rule. Demo means people, cracy means rule. So the rule of the people can only be finalized if they have the right to vote, elect their own rulers. For that, the basic platform has to be placed as to who will conduct those elections and how it is to be processed in an independent country wherein we have no experience in conducting elections. Over a period of time, we'll also see how the elections are important because we give everyone the right to vote after a particular age. We also need to understand that we need to have a constitution. Though a constituent assembly has already been established prior to Indian independence, based on the 1945 Act, the Cabinet Mission Plan, where the constitutional body is already under framework based on the elections held in 1945. Those who who have been elected directly form the Constituent Assembly that will form the Constitution. Nevertheless, a new change that has come in is the 1947 partition, wherein few members of the Constituent Assembly will now move out of the new Constituent Assembly that is to take place, and whatever constitution is framed, we need to implement it. All the rules of the constitution shall be in accordance with the democratic practices. Most important, the newly independent India has to accommodate its diversity. Not that we only had a religious diversity of Hindus and Muslims. We had a number of diversities of cultures and still more religions like Sikhism, like Christianity, like those who belonged to the Muslim community and decided we need to stay in India. They had to be secure. Now they form the minority. So we have Parsis also and other sub communities also, subcultures, a number of languages, those now is so called in the minorities. Besides the diversity, we need to know that the British had left us empty coffers. Those empty coffers had to be filled. That means we need to ensure development also. Development not only in economic aspects, in social aspects as well. Economically, we know we have a zero balance, a nil GDP from we need to rise, from where we need to rise. Our society is equally poor in terms of development, in terms of growth, in terms of education, in terms of the social status that they have. We are in a society which is illiterate, and hence there is that from times immemorial where the unequal status is still prevalent today has to be equalized now as per the new constitution. So we need to protect those socially disadvantaged people, those economically disadvantaged people, and we need to bring a society that is equal in all respects, mentally, morally, actually. So these are the three basic challenges that a newly independent India actually faces. As you can reflect in these photographs, problems of partition, we have floods here, we have a number of children who are still not educated, we are exchanging our administration here. Then this is partition and its consequences, barren lands to be filled, migrants issues. In between, before this could take place, we have a sudden movement from across the borders. We have attacks from across the borders, which is now West Pakistan, infiltrators, communities who want to control Jammu and Kashmir. We leave this here as we will see it in a different section in the next chapter. Alright, let's look into the principle that was adopted for partition, and that being religious majorities. Areas having the majority of a particular religion formed one country. That is, the areas which we now call Pakistan had a Muslim majority and hence formed a different country called West Pakistan, and that Bengal having been divided has another country called East Pakistan. The two major areas of the country that were actually facing the brunt of all divisions was one, Punjab. The current Punjab that you see in India is only a part of the Punjab that was earlier there. Half of it has gone into East Pakistan, into West Pakistan. Similarly, Bengal had already been divided, but the half of Bengal which today forms Bangladesh was actually East Pakistan then. So, and there were a number of defects in this principle that was adopted. There were areas in what we have West Pakistan now which had actually people of the Hindu community or say the Sikh community as well. So did you actually partition it on the basis of majority? There were certain areas that had a majority of Hindu population in West Pakistan. How do you remove it? So let's see it sequence wise. Painful and defective policy to implement. You don't know the boundaries. There are certain communities which has an entire population of a different community, and we have included it in West Pakistan, and likewise the similar thing must have happened in India also. We had pockets of areas which had an entirely Muslim population. So we need to see there are no single belts of Muslim majority areas of concentration in West and East. So you understand there is West Pakistan and there is India in the middle and there is East Pakistan. How does West Pakistan communicate with its part of the territory which has India in the middle? Will India permit other countries to walk into its own territory and move into East Pakistan? How do they manage? Muslim majority areas had areas where non-Muslims were in a majority, especially in Punjab and Bengal. Hence, what if divided till district and lower levels also? How do you divide it in one night, 14th and 15th of August? How do you divide it till lower levels? So it was painful, it was defective, it was difficult. So with these issues in mind, let's reflect on another issue. Do all Muslims actually want to enter India? So we have Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, also called the Frontier Gandhi, in somewhere across Pakistan, near about Pakistan, Afghanistan border. That is called as the Northwest Frontier Province. So these areas do not actually want to become a part of India, did not want to become a part of Pakistan. What do we do with them? But they have Muslim majority areas, so they had no other choice. Then there was a problem of minority on both the borders. Punjab had many Sikhs who had been living there since times immemorial, and they were now finding themselves in Pakistan area. They became easy targets, and by the migration on the refugee issues they were the most hit people around. Unaware of the demarcation at the boundary lines created problems for the migrants. At the dawn of independence, we were not aware whether we are living on the Indian part of the subcontinent or the Pakistani part of the subcontinent. So, ground reality says we were unaware. And other issues. Let's look into the consequences of partition. Partition, we need not tell कि cities like Lahore, Kolkata and Amritsar became communal zones. Communal meaning where there was bitter fighting between both the communities. People had to abandon, leave their homes and search for shelter. Both the countries decided to give them shelter or refuge. Camps were set up. But because the administration was not in place in both the countries, who would control this? Who would manage the shifting? Wherein would they have their stays? Worst sufferers being women and children. In terms of rehabilitation, in terms of self security also. So, what do we say? It was most probably not only a division of boundaries, it was division of hearts. Hearts, they left their homeland where ancestors had stayed. They had left their field, their neighbors where they left their properties. Liabilities and assets were divided. Political division, administrative divisions to the extent of chairs being partitioned. Financial assets were divided. Employees were divided. Railways were divided. Besides, if this had been only in place, it would have been managed. The violence that followed is bitter even today. Memories still remain and the bitterness still persists, which we need to overcome. What's gone is gone, we need to change. Then there are 80 lakh migrants in both the areas, out of which 5 to 10 lakh people have been killed in partition related to violence. India had 12% Muslims then too. Then there were competing political interests behind the conflict. India chose to be secular, while Pakistan declared itself to be a Muslim country, an Islamic preaching country. So, what happens to the minorities, Sikhs specifically, who decided to stay back there? So, these are the issues. I'll continue this in the next episode.